Hey everybody, welcome to Live Paranormal Zone TV. Now tonight I'm really excited about the show, but before we start, I want to ask you all if you would please subscribe to the channel. Now there are two channels. I'm using my backup channel, Live Paranormal Zone TV, and my main channel is Paranormal Zone Do You Believe web series, which is a trademark series. Now hopefully by next Thursday I'll be back on my main channel, but this for now is my backup channel for when things happen. Okay, also if you all want a show reminder, please go to www.paranormalzone.tv. There is a tab for show reminders. This way you won't miss a show and you'll know where I'll be on which channel. So everyone, tonight I'm really excited. Our show topic tonight is parasitic entities, and my guest is Sean Sarway, and Sean, sorry.
Shane's there right now.
Okay, with that, let's bring on Shane.
Shane,
Sorry, Shane. Oh my God, sorry.
No problem,
Shane,
no problem.
hey, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight, and I'm really excited about the topic we're going to talk about. But before we start, would you please tell the viewers a little bit about yourself before we start?
Yeah, I've been doing this work for about 30 years. I started as a young guy had some experiences as real young, and then around the age of 10, I had an illness and I experienced some stuff. And then as an early teenager, I started experimenting and with a mechanical aptitude, trying to figure out what allows these interactions to take place. And I always had like a strong mechanical aptitude and mechanical thirst to understand, not just you tell me something works this way, but I need to see it for myself. I need to figure it out and understand all the inner workings, and I do that. I apply that with everything, but with the paranormal being my number one passion, that was something that I was just after from day one. So in my early teenage years, I started really focusing on, like, say, Ouija boards and stuff like that. Because I've seen so many people get in trouble with them, and why do they get in trouble with them? How do they work? And so I had that process to identify trends in place. I unlearned everything I thought I knew, and I was going to just break it down from the beginning and figure it out on my own. And so that's the approach I've taken, and I've connected a lot of dots. I think a lot of other people haven't, and because of that, and I'm humbled, and I'm fortunate enough to say that I've been able to help a lot of people, thousands of people, with no fails. I go in after clergy, demonologists, all these famous people you see on TV, and I help other investigators when they can't provide relief, and then they call me in. Also, investigators that are getting attacked themselves, because they got something attached to them, and so it's an understanding of the mechanics, and that's exactly what I want to share with the listeners tonight. I think they're going to enjoy it.
All right. Then let's start. What is a parasitic entity?
Parasitic entity is a name that Paul and I started, calling these things a long time ago. Paulino, that is one of your more popular guests, and also a close friend of mine. We'll talk about how I met him in 1998. And, it's a great case with a great story attached to that as well. But so a parasitic entity is something, a lot of these negative haunts people call poltergeists, they call demons. You got the people that always say they're demons, and others just call them poltergeists. Some people call them non-humans, things of that nature. But like I said, nobody knows anything. Nobody really has this locked down. So what I did was I unlearned everything I thought I knew, and I started from scratch. So I'm going to name them off their personalities. And what these negative entities are, they're parasitic, and they feed off of vulnerabilities. They feed off of fear, and we'll get into what allows that. What initiates those things and what attracts that. And because we'll talk about emotions having frequency and things like that. But that's what happens. I mean, we find that, people that they could live in a certain house, and I'll tell a couple stories about that tonight, but people could live in a certain house for many years, and then all of a sudden there's a life-altering circumstance that changes their environment, changes their internal dialogue, changes their emotion, and they become vulnerable, and it draws these parasites to them. They say, okay, I got somebody that I can mess with, and that's how they operate. So that's why we call them parasitic entities, because they feed off of negativity. They feed off of fear, or they're attracted to people that are fearful, but they're also that's what they need to operate. They instill fear, and I'll get into my theories on that. Why that agenda? Why we used to say, we think they just they feed off of negative energies, but I believe that they do. When somebody has one attached to them, a parasitic entity, they do get drained. They become weaker. In some circumstances, people's light bills go up, stuff like that. But I don't think that's the only reason why they're there. They have a certain agenda, and I really think that that agenda is, to basically hurt spiritual growth, and not just with a single person, but with humanity. And they need this. It's almost like they need us in conflict, and they like that. So I think that's why there's so many different religions that have been created throughout the years that are in conflict with each other. But these things come in, and they attack people at their most vulnerable. But they're cowards. People, as well as like investigators. I've seen demonologists. I've seen priests that cower to these things when they see, how nasty they can become, or they fight against them with hostility, or they try to fight them with like the paranormal against the paranormal, meaning divine intervention to get rid of this nasty entity. But none of these people are trained in the true mechanics of what allowed that interaction, what initiated that interaction, and what allowed that haunt to continue and also escalate. The clergy are not educated in that area, and nobody truly is, and nobody seems to be paying attention to that. So, and that's through the process of identifying trends I talked about. That's what I started to realize was, it started off with analyzing Ouija boards and other things like that. Why people get in trouble with those, and I did that at a very early age. And Ouija boards are not magical, mysterious things. They're just a piece of paper or a compressed cardboard or whatever they are. But it is a tool that focuses your attention on the possibility of an interaction. So most of these people use these Ouija boards to connect with a loved one that passed away, or to talk to somebody that they love, or they're always reaching out, but it exposes a vulnerability. And these parasites say, oh, okay, you want to talk, let's talk. And they act like the one that you love. They know things. And why do they know the things? How do they know how to push your buttons? It's done through frequency. Everything's done through frequency. Emotions have frequency. We emit frequency. And when our emotions are lowered, when we're in a vulnerable state or a fearful state, or we're being negative, our frequency is lowered substantially, and it actually becomes equivalent to the same vibrational frequencies that cancer emits, mildew, mold, other parasitic life forms. So there can't be coincidence, but we become tuned to these parasites, these entities, like a two-way radio. So if we raise our frequency, basically raise our emotions, heighten our emotions, and not just saying, okay, I'm going to be happy today. No, you have to be happy truly in your heart. You have to be in a better place. When we do that, we change our frequency, we break the connection. But these things, they find us through that. And vulnerabilities, frequency, emotions, stuff like that. So,
do you have to be involved in any kind of paranormal in order for this to happen to you? Or could this just happen to anybody?
It can happen to anybody. And, it doesn't somebody had a bad day today, and they're feeling down that they're going to be attacked by an entity. There's other things that help this process. There's natural elements that are present that can allow it to happen more frequently and more strongly, but more so we as participants in this. Now, I'll tell the story. I guess this is a good time to tell the story of how Paul and I met, because it'll kind of explain this. Excuse me. That's Paulino. Back in 1998, I was contacted in a chat room by a gentleman who, it was back in the AOL days, the dial-up, and they had the chat rooms and stuff, and late at night I used to go on there to help people, give them advice. I used to analyze dreams too and stuff like that. So this gentleman was on there, and he private messaged me because he liked the stuff I was saying to other people, and he said, I have a situation, and I'm being attacked, and it's been going on for almost a couple years or so. So he says, but I have another investigator that I've been working with, and let me check to see if he minds. He's a local guy, and this is, like I said, in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. So I said, okay, sure. Normally I work by myself, and but whatever, whatever it takes to help you. So he checked with Paulino. Paulino was like, yeah, sure. Paul's a great guy, and I normally work alone, he said, but let's meet. So I went down there, and sure enough, Paul and I hit it off right off the bat. I mean, we've been brothers ever since. I mean, it was like we've known each other our whole lives, and just working with him, it's like we didn't have to choreograph anything. We just, everything flowed, and it was awesome. So now this guy had been going through this for quite some time. So he had an entity that was rising up through the corner of his bedroom when he was in bed at night, and he said it was like a disfigured lady. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock, early hours, and inches from his face would be this disfigured lady's face, just inches, like right in his face. One night, causing him to go completely gray. I thought that was only in movies, but he literally, I had left there one night, and he called me 6 hours later and said, he told me what happened, and I went back down there, and he looked like he was 110 years old. I mean, and he was in his late 50s, early 60s. Now, he had things being thrown at him. He had this, all this stuff going on. So, Paul witnessed stuff there. I witnessed stuff there. I had a guy who was older than me who, told me that he was much more experienced in the paranormal than what he actually was. And he said, I really want to learn from you, because you have a great reputation and this and that. He goes, so he bought me lunch one day, and I said, sure, we got this case down in Rhode Island. Let's, you can come along with that. What he witnessed in this house blew his mind. He thought he knew that the paranormal was real. He just never really experienced it firsthand. And once he did, it sent him over the edge. This guy lived in a, almost $1 million house. He lost his house, lost his job, lost his wife. He lost everything. He lives with his mother in a trailer home right now in a very, very bad city. It just sent him over the edge. So what I did was, when I sat down with this gentleman, I said, okay, how long have you lived here? He goes, well, my girlfriend's lived here for 11 years. I've lived here for 6 years. I said, how long has it been haunted? Or how long have you been dealing with this? He goes, like the last 2 years. I said, what happened 2 years ago that changed your internal dialogue, changed your environment? Something drastic, something life-altering must have happened to send shockwaves through, through this environment in your own internal dialogue. Something changed, And he goes, well, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So, I mean, that's a pretty substantial. I mean, that doesn't have a pretty good survival rate,
No, it doesn't. I don't think at all. No survival rate.
No, exactly. So he was put on medicines, that disallowed him to work. Plus, you're not going to work anyway at that point. So he was sitting at home and just dwelling on the fact that, he will probably succumb to this illness, and also thinking about loved ones that, his friends that he saw blown up in front of him because he was a Vietnam vet. He was a war hero, and so it was just a big negative, stew that he was just stewing in, and so basically that level, that being lowered like that and just being so down, and it made him vulnerable, and something said, okay, this is somebody I can mess with, and it was. I witnessed it. I seen plenty of activity myself. I took a picture in his bedroom. I sent you that picture, and it was back in the.
All right, wait a minute now. What picture are you talking about?
It's the one
with the fan.
Yeah, with the fan.
All right. Let me show it to the viewers.
Okay.
All right.
Now,
okay.
It's tough to see, because now this is back in the. I paid almost $900 for a 1.3 megapixel Sony Mavica that took a floppy disk. So, but this was, to today's standards, that's very low quality. But I didn't use a flash. I don't like to use flash because it creates effects that I don't like. But now I sent you the explanation photo just so, because sometimes people can't see it because there's other stuff going on in the photo, and I'll explain what that is.
All right, it's the close-up. It's the close-up of the face.
Yeah. And
okay.
then I put, where the hair is, the eyes, the nose. You can even see the eyebrow.
I'm showing it to him.
Yeah. So basically, I was talking to the gentleman. He was sitting about 5 feet in front of that door, and I was diagonal to that doorway. And in his door, the blinds were drawn. It was in the afternoon, so it was kind of dark in his room, but still daytime. I could see some in there. And then it was like heat off the pavement in his room, but it wasn't just rising up. It was swirling around, but it had that same kind of effect. So I started turning on the camera. I didn't want to startle him. I didn't say anything. I started walking into the doorway. I stood in the doorway, and I could see where everything was. I just couldn't see details and stuff like that. That started to dissipate. As it started to dissipate, I saw something bobbing in and back and forth from behind the fan, and that at one point, finally, this thing stuck its head out and just looked at me, and it had dark black eyes, and it was just staring at me with, like, almost through me, and I'm not afraid of this stuff. You really can't be, because I understand it, so I don't. There's nothing to be afraid of once you understand it. And but this thing was, just really emotionless, nasty, and it didn't like me. I could tell, but it was also afraid that I was there. And so I snapped the picture with no flash. Like I said, I don't like to use flash because it kind of, you'll get other effects but you can kind of see that heat off the pavement effect on the left side of the full picture. But it was, but yeah, so that was the case that I met Paulino on, and so what we told the guy, because after this diagnosis and him just sitting at home and dwelling on negative thoughts and stuff like that, was to simplify it for him, to give him a prescription, which was simplistic, but we just told him basically, we're going to purge your house with positive energy. You have to change your thoughts. You have to become more positive, and there's more to it than that. But I was trying to make it simple for him, and say, don't just sit at home and dwell on this stuff. You go out, do something that makes you feel good about yourself. Volunteer at a soup kitchen. Do something. He actually did that. He volunteered at a soup kitchen. There was a stone church in Woonsocket that was going to be torn down. He led a fight to save it. He was on the nightly news. He was on the front page of the newspaper. He had drive. He had a positive drive. He had a purpose, and it took his mind off the negative stuff. And so his internal dialogue changed. Therefore, his frequency changed, and it discontinued the connection, like a two-way radio, with this parasitic entity. This thing just gone, like just boom, like a light switch, gone. gone.
Well, you had also stated on your website that he was also thinking about all the horrible things that happened when he was in Vietnam.
Right, yeah, and I just mentioned that. Like, yeah, he saw his friends blown up in Vietnam, and so that was all part of that whole thing. And now, not only did this entity just disappear, believe it or not, his cancer did also. It doesn't even show up on X-rays. He's still alive today. I do Paulino's show quite a bit, his radio show, but about a year and a half, or probably close to 2 years now, we did it. I went down to do it, and Paul had just ran into this gentleman's brother who said he's still alive and he's cancer-free. He lives in a nursing home. You know, he's older, but he's still alive. And so, I mean, coincidence? Who knows? I mean, this parasitic entity came the same time the cancer did and left the same time the cancer did. You know?
Oh my God. So just by having these awful memories of Vietnam and what happened, and probably being depressed and whatever, this all happened to him because of this? And the entity... Now, okay, I want to ask you, the parasitic entities, are they also demonic?
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't put the same labels on things that everyone else does. I don't, people say demons. Now, and I'm being respectful when I say this. I can back up what I'm saying right now, and I say this in a very humble way. I've gone in after demonologists, some very well-known demonologists, probably all the well-known demonologists, and I've gone in after their tactics didn't work, and they treated it as a demon, and they did their things, and they don't understand the mechanics. They don't understand what initiated it. They don't pay attention to it. They don't pay attention to. They ignore the fact that we are participants. They ignore the fact that we have something to do with this connection to the entity, whether we know it or not. Now, they just say, okay, I'm going to fight the paranormal with the paranormal. So I got my holy water, I got my oil, I got my Bible, and I'm going to go in there and yell at this thing. You can't use negative emotion to fight these things. It empowers them. They're there because of that. You need to, I'll tell you what, if you're going to do anything to get rid of these negative entities, they are allergic to love and positive thought. So, but attention to these things is number one wrong. I never go into these cases and address these parasites one-on-one. You don't. That's just wrong. I mean, that's why I've gone in after a lot of priests and these demonologists, because that's their tactics. They want to confront. You don't do that. The best thing you can do. These parasites need attention. They thrive off of it, and I like to tell a story because I think a lot of people will understand this. Think about when you're on the phone, right? And you're having a conversation with a friend, and your child comes up to you, your little child, and they're tugging at your pant like, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," or "Daddy, daddy, daddy." If you just interrupt your phone conversation and say, "What, honey? What, honey?" they're going to do it more often, more frequently, and they're not going to consider you. But if you gesture to the child to wait, you finish your phone conversation, the child's going to learn how to wait till you're done, or they're going to go play somewhere else. So, and that's how these parasitic entities are. They need your attention, and if they don't have it, they have nothing. So we have to ignore their they're going to do things to try to initiate, a connection through, based on, usually it comes from your vulnerability. They kind of pop in, they do something. They might act like a loved one. They might act like a little cute 7-year-old girl walking through your house, innocent. And so you call her, "Sally, hey, Sally, hey, Sally, we're going to work now. Hey, Sally, we'll be back later." Next thing you know, Sally's ripping your house apart. It's not Sally. They do anything they can to try to focus your attention on them, anything that it takes. And they know how to do that, and with just your emotion. And how is that so? It's all done through frequency.
All right, so how would we recognize a parasitic entity?
I would say the majority of interactions or things that happen, the majority of are parasites. And even if they seem innocent at first, like I I said, a good example is that the Ouija board, people go to talk to a loved one, and it's Uncle George or whoever, and next thing you know, it's not Uncle George anymore. So these things, as soon as you focus your attention on the possibility of an interaction with anybody, a loved one or anything, these parasitic entities pick up on that through a frequency. They're connected to that, and I'll say that word a lot because I'll tell you, I've had several breakthroughs lately, and I wouldn't be so strong with that if I couldn't prove it. And now, but basically, that's why I tell people, it's not the Ouija board that's evil. You could use a Ouija board if you understood the mechanics. The problem is a lot of people have a hard time understanding the mechanics because they've been pre-programmed by all these preconceived ideas. And I'm telling you right now, all the normal, the preconceived ideas of what a haunt is and how to deal with them, they're all wrong. They're like totally wrong. And it's actually a lot more simple than people think. And so a parasitic entity.
You just said about what is a haunt. What, in your words, what is a haunt?
Well, like I said, typically the haunts are parasites. They're almost always parasites. And now, I can tell you for sure that I have thousands of cases behind me. I lost count, at a couple thousand cases that I've done. And I was doing 5 a week at one point, and I can't do that anymore, but I'm pretty active. And now everyone says, I got a ghost, and so my house is haunted. And if it's a negative haunt, I should say. Sometimes you'll see things walking through your house that don't acknowledge you. That's a whole different thing. We get into Multiverse. We get into stuff like that. But in the cases of the parasitic entities, and these types of haunts, the ones that interact with us and things of that nature and are aggressive, they didn't. I can tell you, 99% of the time, they have nothing to do with your house. They never lived there. It's not haunting your house. It's haunting you. It's connected to you, not the home. So I've seen brand new houses haunted really bad. Brought on by different things, use of a Ouija board, a change in someone's, life, their environment, a dramatic kind of lifestyle change or life event type of thing. And so when I say, you have to kind of reverse engineer a haunt, everyone's haunt. Everyone's different. We're connected differently. A lot of times it's a lot of similar stuff, but you have to dig back into, when did this start? What changed in your life? Not, okay, let's grab some oil and some, incense and walk around your house. Now, those things can be healing to religion's great, smudging, all that stuff is great, and it can work, and it does work sometimes, but it works because if it empowers you, it pulls in more love into your life. It makes you feel less fearful of this thing, more in control of you and your environment. Then that's why it works. But it works inadvertently, you see, because it's actually not dealing with the mechanics specifically or directly. It's a tool to allow that to happen without you knowing it. So, but the problem is a lot of these times, it doesn't work, and when it comes back worse than ever. And sometimes it'll kind of go away because people pull themselves together for a moment, but then when they go back, we never fix the initial problem. We never fix their family dysfunction or an addiction or something that allowed them to be in a bad place. We never fix that. The holy water didn't fix that. The Bible didn't fix that. And then all of a sudden, and I'm not attacking religion. Religion is great. I'm just telling you that it's the internal mechanics that these things don't apply. I mean, they don't address. So we have to address those issues directly, that's the root cause. And these different tactics don't do that. They just try to, like I said, use the paranormal divine intervention to deal with this paranormal situation instead of chopping at the root, and that's so very important.
But Shane, because somebody gets depressed and they think about the past and maybe some other things that are in their past memories, does that mean everybody is going to have a parasitic entity attached to them?
No, absolutely not. And that's what I said earlier. That doesn't mean if you had a bad day that you're going to be attacked by something. There's other things that help this process. There's natural.
What are the components then involved in the mechanics that allows an aggressive attachment?
First of all, it's usually mostly a vulnerability that starts it off. It's a prolonged change in emotion, and I'm saying frequency. It's a lowered frequency, a lowered emotion, a vulnerability. There are also natural elements that help this to happen, and I'm finding places with rivers or streams nearby strengthen this dramatically. You can take the same person with the same issue in one house, and they might not have anything happen, or maybe just a couple little things. But then you put them near a house that's surrounded by rivers and streams, and it's a whole different story. It's a nightmare, and that's what we're. Same thing with the paranormal flap areas that I know Paulino talked about on your show, and those areas are very, very strong. They're very active. It concentrates frequencies. There's electromagnetic fields, but I think more so, it traps and collects frequencies and kind of puts them in. And I'm talking frequencies in the matter of, in the sense of these entities as well, because we're all frequency. Everything's frequency. So it kind of collects all these things in one area. So you have these hot spots because of that. It's like, I guess, in the sense of the multiverse, the rivers and streams would be in a way like a medium between the multiverse, but then also with these parasites, it's also a doorway, and I hate using that word, but a place where they can come and go.
A portal?
So
a portal?
Areas.
Is it a portal you're talking about?
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of people will call it, and so these areas would be much stronger, and for those reasons. And that's why these flap areas all have, these rivers and streams nearby. Now, some of the worst, a lot of the worst cases I've done, and I've done some of the worst, and these have, it's not just one home in this area. There's multiple homes. It's a ton of them that have activity, and I'm finding that the level of the activity kind of is dictated by the level of maybe dysfunction or negative, motion in the home. So you got houses that are more positive, so they have activity going on, but it's not really bad. And like I did one case, this is a long time ago, but there was one house that I did. These people just wanted confirmation. They had activity going on in their house, but it was positive. They'd walk in a room, the light would turn on for them. They'd walk out the door would shut for them. It seemed to be like a helpful spirit. They had one of the children fell out of a tree, broke their leg. The mother was in like a little pantry with the washer and dryer going, both going. She couldn't hear, and she turned around, and the child was sitting in the doorway with a broken leg, crying. And how'd you get here? Because the leg was completely broken. Well, the nice lady brought me in here. Of course, there was nobody around. So this thing was helpful. Now, I found evidence that, we saw things, we recorded things that happened in the house that led to their story and the credibility. But then years later, they had moved and somebody else moved in. This family was dysfunctional. It wasn't as loving and kind. This was not a nice, helpful haunt anymore. This was something different because the environment that we maintained inside our home is going to dictate what comes through that door, based on how we conduct ourselves, or the like I said, the environment that we maintain. So this dysfunctional family had a really nasty aggressive haunt going on, because it wasn't anything that was attached to the home. There was natural elements, excuse me, natural elements that was allowing stuff to come through, and what we do inside of our home, our personal environment, dictates kind of what we draw to us, and so that's kind of the way I like to explain that.
Now, in case of that one case that you were telling us about, the fellow that had been in Vietnam, how long had it's kind of, I guess, a depression. How long had that been going on with him before he called you in or anybody else in to try and get help? Didn't he call a priest in as well, or did you guys call the priest in?
No, I don't. I don't do that. But he was like me. I'm Native American and French, and he was also, and so, but he was Roman Catholic, so he called in his Roman Catholic priest, and now he went in there and did his thing. It got worse. He asked him to come back. His priest came to the porch. There was like a porch, and then you walked in. There was an entryway, an apartment door to the right, an apartment door to the left, and then a basement door. He lived in the apartment to the left. Priest got to the front door, didn't walk into the entryway, and said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this," and he left. And so, because apparently he had issues after leaving there himself. He also, what I forgot about, and I just heard Paulino talk about this, was that police officers were called to this house too, and he wasn't even home, but there was major crazy noises coming from his apartment when he wasn't home, so cops were called in, and then this gentleman heard about it, and then they were told to call Paul, because Paul lived right in the same town. And so, but it was going on for a couple of years, I guess, and I don't know how long Paul was involved with it, but I'm just, for whatever reason, this guy found me, and I'm glad, because we were able to help this gentleman. But selfishly for me, I was able to make a great lifetime friend, Paulino.
Okay, so that's what I wondered. So he had been in that mental state for a couple of years.
Yeah, almost a couple of years, I think it was.
Yeah, because I don't know. I just kind of find it hard to believe that somebody like that, with the memories and the I call it depression and not being happy, if this just happens for a short time, that a parasitic entity would find them. I would think there would have to be over some time where this just is continuing, and because the more you do it, the more the negativity it would be attracted. I could see that.
Yeah, no, it took 3 weeks. He got the diagnosis. He was put out of work, and so he told me it was about 3 weeks after that these attacks started. And
3 weeks? It had to. Shane, I just think it had to have been happened before then. I just do.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he did have a kind of he was all over the place. Like, and I find this a lot with these people that are they're spiritual and they're reaching in different directions. And he happened to reach out to his native side, and he was in on that. And then the Roman Catholic, and he tended to be all over the board. And I find people that are trying to find themselves spiritually and find their path tend to get in a lot of trouble, because they're not clearly defined as to really what they want. But what that is that's them saying that they are open to this, and when you're not grounded to something specifically, it leaves you open to everything, and so even these parasites. So he was definitely spiritual. He just didn't have a clear path, and I think that might have got him lost on his journey. You know what I mean? And so he ended up being connected to something. So, right. And I find that a lot.
Now, you said you've handled hundreds of cases. any of those cases, were any of them involved in the paranormal at all that you helped?
Well, I've helped thousands of people, actually.
But were any of them in the paranormal, actually in the paranormal? Like a
like doing, they were investigators or something?
Yeah.
Yes, I've helped a lot. I've helped a lot. And some well-known, which, I'll never give names or nothing like that, but some well-known people who thought they were being attacked. I've also helped other groups who, well-known groups that, and other groups too, that go in to try to, help families, and they're at a loss, so they reach out to me, and I go in there and help them, and it's not, I don't say that's not an ego thing for me. I say it because, and I never post anything about these cases. I never talk about these cases or nothing like that specifically, because they were somebody else's cases. I went in there to help provide relief to that family or an individual, and that's why I do this, and because I figured some stuff out that I think other people haven't. So it's not just an obligation; it's really kind of who I am, and I love doing that. I love helping people,
All right, I'm curious about the paranormal investigators that you have helped. Were these? And I'm sure you did an interview and a study on them or whatever. Were any of these paranormal investigators depressed before they started doing paranormal investigations?
I'm trying to recall if any of them were depressed, but what I do know is their interest in the paranormal was for the wrong reasons. It was more for Scooby-Doo effect than it was to help people. They also, most of these people they think they know that the paranormal is real, but once they actually view it, at its top level, it blows their mind. And you can't have, it can't be 1 ounce of you that gets afraid, that gets fearful when something happens. Or you can't go in there and get angry. You see a lot of them antagonizing. You see that on these TV shows, and they antagonize, and then next thing you know, they're being attacked on some other episode. You can't do that. You can't use negative emotion in these situations. The only emotion, I usually go in there blank, but when you really want to get rid of these things, you have to be in a more positive state of mind. There can't be no fear. There can't be so these people that, like I say, they witness stuff, and that fear level gets them in trouble because they become a target because of that. And also, people that become obsessed with this stuff. And now I say, some might say, like, 'cause this is my thing, this is my life. The paranormal work is my life, but it's my life for a lot of reasons, helping people further understanding stuff like that. But these other people get obsessed with, every aspect without the knowledge, like let's use the Ouija board, let's do a seance, let's go to this spooky graveyard, let's do this. And when you have that obsession, it controls your internal dialogue, and that signals that you're going to pay attention to these things, and that can get you in trouble too. These things need to know you're going to pay attention to them. So if you're one of these paranormal investigators that are obsessed with it for the wrong reasons, you become a target that way also. So not too many people are truly geared to do or programmed to do this work the right way. And
I would say probably 80% of them aren't. That's what
right.
They should.
And even outside of that, there's just so much other stuff that you need to know. And we see these shows trying to debunk stuff, but they don't know every area to debunk. There's so many other things that they never discuss. Some of these well-known groups, I went in one house, these well-known groups went in there and said, yep, the place has an evil entity in the house. Now, nobody was living in the house. The man of the house had passed away from a rare form of cancer. The lady of the house moved out. She refused to go back in the house.
Oh.
Her stepson, who grew up in the house, hated the house. He ended up smashing it with all the walls in the basement with a sledgehammer and stuff like that. And there was a couple groups in there that were, well known, I guess, or whatever, who said, yeah, there's something evil in this house. I went to the house. I'm very scientific. I'm scientific first, but I'm also sensitive, and I can feel regular electromagnetic fields, and I can also sense presence. And there was no presence in this house, but there was an electromagnetic field. The strange part about this was there was no power turned onto the house. It was disconnected, so there was no power going into the house. So no, the refrigerator wasn't powered. Everything was off. Everything was gone. No power at all. But I felt this electromagnetic field, and my EMF detector confirmed it. I'm talking really high amounts, pretty substantial. So it was really high in the kitchen, and sporadic throughout the rest of the house, but very high in the basement too, below the kitchen. And turns out the kitchen and below the kitchen were the hot spots. That's where they were experiencing all this stuff. Now, the symptoms that were going on in this house were not a lot of witnessing of activity. People were getting irate. They were hostile. They were hostile to each other. They wanted to damage things. They wanted to damage each other. Just anger and hate, and they couldn't explain it. They would leave the house for a little while. They'd be fine. One of the groups that went to this house, there were 3 married couples and a couple other people involved in this group. I think there was 8 of them or something like that. They were allowed free access to this house for 2 weeks. They were there a lot, and the 3 married couples divorced. The group split up, and it screwed them all up. And there was never any entity there. They thought there was, and it really just freaked them out. I went in there and I found these electromagnetic fields. So I had to. So where are they coming from? Most often, see, this is what a lot of people don't realize, but you have to be good at everything. You can't just be good at, oh, it's a ghost. Now, based on where the kitchen was and in the basement, it was a finished basement, I knew I had to find where the power was coming into the house, or where the meter box outside the house. Now, attached to the meter box, there's what's called the grounding rod. It goes into the ground, and it connects to your electrical, connects to your plumbing. So if your house gets hit by lightning, it'll ground out, and it'll hopefully save your house. But what was happening was there was something feeding into that grounding rod, and it's called reverse ground looping, and it could be coming in from a faulty grounding of a transformer nearby, or another house, or something like that. But it was feeding into the ground rod, going into going through her plumbing lines, and that's why the kitchen in this part of the basement was so high with EMF. And now these levels of EMF, and I'm talking, in certain spots would peg my meter. It would just blow it right up. It wouldn't even read as high as it was going. Cause hostility, cause psychosexual disorders, cause people to be depressed, cause it destroys your immune system. And now, not only did the guy die of a rare form of cancer, the lady of the house also had all kinds of tumors, but luckily for her, none of them were cancerous, but she had all kinds of tumors. She had health issues. She was on 12 different medicines. And so I said, what happened when you moved out of the house? She goes, Shane, I don't take one medicine anymore, and I feel great. And now she really thought she had a demon, but once I explained it to her, she's like, wow, that makes sense. She had an angry house, but it was all caused through an extremely high electromagnetic field. No other investigator that went in this house knew how to identify that. And see, and like I said, this is not an egotistic thing. Why I'm saying that is, it's important when you tell somebody you can help them, you need to know how to help them. You can't just go in there with these foundationless theories and say, or you feel something, so you say, yeah, you got something evil in here, because then you're just feeding the problem. You have to be able to identify everything, and there are so many different things to look at, and and I've been able to help everyone with all these different things. I have a pretty
Well, that's why I think it's so wrong that paranormal groups, are allowed to go into homes, because that's a lot of times that's what they'll say. Oh, it's negative. It's probably demonic, and I've heard from those that are quite knowledgeable and experienced in the field, that they, like the higher guys, the higher people that everybody seems that knows in the paranormal, that they have to go in and they have to fix these things, because these people are allowed to just come in and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I think it's wrong. I don't think it should be allowed myself.
Right. It's ridiculous, and I caution people. I've run into so many cases too where, people aren't really into the paranormal at all, but they start going through something. They don't know how to reach out, so they turn to these TV shows, and they reach out to these TV shows of these people that they see on these programs. And so that's, I think, why I've been in after so many of these people you see on TV, when it hadn't worked, because these people didn't know where else to turn, and they might not be so computer savvy or whatever to do a Google or whatever, but even that's dangerous. But how do you? There really isn't a lot of people that's truly qualified on a top level to deal with, all kinds of different situations, and so I've gone in after a lot of these people, I think, for that reason, and even I helped a doctor. I like to tell this story. This prominent doctor in the Boston area, very brilliant guy. He started waking up in the middle of the night, and he was seeing like a green hue, like a formation by his bed. It was green, sometimes gray, kind of oval shape, but kind of like in a form of a body, by the foot of his bed, and it scared the daylights out of me. This guy, real scientific, never gave the spiritual stuff a thought at all. Lived in this big giant mansion by himself, and he also started experiencing real bad migraines. It started with the hues, and then came the migraines. So he reached out to a bunch of people, investigators or whatever. He had CAT scans and MRIs done on his brain for like 2 years by the top specialists. They never found anything. Everything's normal. We don't understand what's going on, but he's having these bad migraines. So eventually, I think I did a top FM radio show around here. I think that's when he heard me and contacted me and told me the story and said, can you help? And I'm like, well, let me come by and visit. So I was in his house for 5 minutes, and I already kind of knew the story, even though I usually don't like to hear it, over the phone or through an email, because people try to speculate as to what they think they're experiencing, and it's usually never right. So I like to break it down my own way. So, but this guy was pretty smart, and I said, so it happens at night. You wake up with the headaches mostly? Yes. You experience these hues at night? Yes. Can I go to your bedroom? Yes. So I went to his bedroom. This guy was rich, had all the nice stuff, but he had this older style alarm clock radio. Even the newer ones do this too, by the way. But it was one of those ones with the flip numbers that that flip down and whatever. And I put my electromagnetic field tester next to it, and it pegged it. I mean, right over 200, right? So this was inches from where he lays his head at night. So I said, do me a favor, take this and just move it across the room. On your dresser, you'll have to get up instead of hitting snooze, but sometimes that's a good thing, But call me in 2 weeks. He called me a week later and said, my headaches are gone. I don't see these hues anymore. And he was blown away. He's like, I've been seeing specialists for 2 years. He himself, a top doctor, and you were in here for 5 minutes. And not a pat on the back from me. It's just that, I take the time to try to understand everything. When I started doing this work, I'm going to pick this apart. I'm going to analyze every different crevice and crack, and kind of apply that mechanical aptitude and try to understand what could cause sleep paralysis, what could cause this, what could cause that, and you have to look at everything and know everything about clinical explanations as well as the bizarre. And there's not a lot of people out there that's qualified to do this work.
No.
It's a touchy area.
No, and there's not a lot of people that, because there's so few of them, that there's no way. I mean, I talked about this with Bill Bean on one of my shows, and anyway, okay. Another thing I want to ask you, for those that use the Ouija board and they're making a connection and they have absolutely no idea who they're connecting with, those who who conduct EVP sessions all the time, whether they're at a haunted location or at their home, or ghost box, they use the ghost box. How do you feel about that? Is that something that people shouldn't be doing? Is it dangerous? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that is going to be the same thing for the uneducated, or as far as the mechanics go. It's the same thing. It's a tool that's going to focus your attention on a possibility of interaction. So same thing with the Ouija board, same thing with the a digital recorder. When you go to a cemetery and you say, hey, who's here, and it's the same thing. And I've helped people that got in trouble the same way. So it's just another tool to focus your attention on the subject matter, which then allows or attracts these parasites and said, hey, this guy wants to pay attention to me, let's play.
When you get a case, when somebody contacts you and they say, there's something really bad happening in our home, where there's negativity, when you go out to these cases, what is the first thing you do?
See, a lot of times, for one thing, like if it's a family, the family always wants to seem to send their kids away, because they don't want their kids exposed to this. Well, the kids have already been exposed to this, so the way I operate is different than most. I'm not going to talk about weird things. I'm not going to talk to the demon or wherever these people call these things. I need to first of all figure out, like I said, reverse engineer their figure out when it started. A lot of times, I'm good with psychology. I got a background in that as well. So it takes, being good with how you talk to people and getting them to open up, because a lot of times there's underlying issues that they won't just tell everybody. And I've been lucky enough to where these people actually open up to me, and they allow me into those issues, and they'll discuss that with me if that is a contributing factor. Other times it's different things, but I need to address everyone involved, because it's the environment that we're maintaining. Everyone has a part of that, even if it's only attacking one person at a time. For instance, I did a case in a city where these people, I think they might have heard me on a radio show too. Actually, no, the lady of the house worked with the wife of a radio host that I did a show on. That's what it was. So they were being attacked, but they didn't want to. They were embarrassed. They didn't want to call out for help to anybody. They didn't want the neighbors to know. They didn't want nobody to know. So because these two women were friends, they confided in each other and said, can you ask that guy? So I went to the house, and now initially it was attacking the woman, the lady of the house. She was getting things thrown at her, scratches, different things. The first time I was there, I actually was able to get her alone, because she seemed weird when we were asking questions around around her husband, that she would glance, like her eyes would go over to him, and she seemed nervous to answer. So I knew there was an issue there. So we finally got her alone in a room, and when we did, she started opening up and telling us that there were marital issues, like pretty substantial marital issues. And when she started opening up, I kid you not, it was like fireworks above her head. There was like, pew, 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 like these little sparks were flying around her head. There was multiple witnesses of that, not just me. We didn't make her aware of it because we didn't want to startle her any more than she already was. So we had to tell her, you have to, you can't be a victim. She seemed to have like a victim mentality, and that seems to be a common trait too. A lot of times is people they been victimized in life by family members, by their father, or by whoever, that they're just kind of surrendered to that, and they have a victim mentality. And so she was kind of that way with this circumstance going on in her house, and that kind of made her a target. So I had to tell her, I had to empower her and get her more focused on her and who she was, and be more positive, and don't give this thing attention because it needs your attention. If something happens, ignore it, all this other stuff, and you are in control of its ability to stick around. It's not the other way around. She listened wholeheartedly. She did awesome. But what happened then was this entity, who was it was a pretty nasty, one of the nastiest, said, okay, if you're not going to pay attention to me, I know how to get you to pay attention to me. And it started attacking the kids. I seen her on my second visit there. I seen her 4-year-old son get thrown through the bathroom. He was brushing his teeth. The vanity doors flung open so hard, he was standing on a little step stool. He went flying backwards into the tub, tore the shower curtain down and everything. He was okay. But when I say you can't have negative emotion or hostility, I can tell you I failed at that moment because I had some words for that thing after that. So we hit this thing hardcore, and that was that was 20. No, that was probably 14 years ago. And I spoke with them. I forget how many years ago, but it was a long time, and they were still problem free. They said, we started to slip back into our old habits, because I eventually addressed the issues with the whole family. I got them as a family on a more positive path, because they were dysfunctional. They had issues internally, and I got them all. Once I was able to talk to them all, I got them all on the same plan, the same, get out of the house together, hold hands, walk down the street, talk about each other's day, things like that. Don't just come home and stress about your negative day. Do something different. Focus on you and each other, and not the stresses of your job or whatever, or the stresses of having, they had a child living there from one of their previous marriages, and that was causing conflict. He was a grown-up, and there was issues causing, there. So I said, just get out, hold hands, take walks and stuff like that, focus on each other. And they said the only time, once in a while, they slip off of that, and things will start to happen, and they're like, oh, we got to do what Shane said, and they go back to it, and it goes away again.
So it happens just like that? If they go back to their old ways, that entity knows, and it comes and it starts causing problems again?
Well, and remember, one of those factors are the natural elements. They have a river that runs behind their house that comes towards their house and bends away just as it points towards the house. And I find that those are the most active areas. The ones that have rivers or streams that point towards the property and then bend away, or waterfalls. It seems to, it's a constriction in the water. I mean, I'm going to get all scientific and weird and confuse people, but it seems to be where there's kind of a restriction, a change in velocity or a restriction in the water, seems to be maybe altering frequencies, and in allowing that to interact with us, bringing it to our level so we can experience certain things. And that's the only thing I can deduce, based on what I've seen over and over again. But there's had one of those rivers that I found to be so helpful in making your home either, amazingly haunted in a good way, or active in a good way, or horribly haunted in a bad way.
When on these cases that you've handled, are all of them a parasitic entity, or some of them actual hauntings of the house?
The ones that seem to be hauntings of the house are most usually products of the multiverse, or bleed overs of the multiverse, and segment, things that happen at a different time in space-time, or a different moment in space-time, or a different parallel, I should say, that bleeds over, kind of like if you picture layers of an onion, and you put, like, say, food coloring, and it kind of bleeds from one to the other, and that allows, and what happens too is it seems to be homes where there was like a dramatic event or something bad that sent ripples in space-time, and it allowed these ripples to cross over into our parallel, letting us witness something that happened at a different time. And one time I was working in like I said, I own a remodeling company, and I do the paranormal stuff. Now, excuse me, years ago, my friend who also owned his own remodeling company was going on vacation. He said, "Hey, I have to do this small little job, but I'm going to be on vacation. Can you do it for me?" I said, "Sure." So I went to this it was an apartment building in a bad neighborhood, simple little job, replacement window or whatever, and it was like the old windows with the rope with the weight in the wall, and
oh yeah, that's old.
Yeah. So this had paint on top of paint on top of paint, so it was stuck in the jam, in the window frame. So I was beating it out with a hammer, and it was kind of stuck in there. Not making a ruckus, right? And I'm just bang, 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 bang. Next thing I know, I'm alone in the house, this apartment, and I feel this all too familiar feeling, like there's somebody behind me, and I like I said, I don't get weird, I don't get nervous about being in a play. I could be in the pitch dark, I don't get creepy or nothing like that. But I could just sense this thing behind me, and I turned around. There was a young guy, probably around 18 years old, standing behind me, crouched down with like his hands up his side of him. He's like looking around, like, what is that, right? Now, this was just a single mom with a small child living in this, a young boy living in this house. So, like I said, I was in a bad neighborhood, so I'm like, this is either an intruder or this is something weird, and either way, I want part of it. So, it turned and walked, it ran into the room, and I followed. I was in there seconds after it. The window was locked. There was nothing under the bed, nothing in the closet. I looked everywhere, nothing in there. But I saw this thing plain as day, just like if you were standing in front of me 10 feet away or 12 feet away. But this thing was reacting to this noise I was making. So, I tell the story, and people say, well, wow, you saw a ghost. No, maybe I was his ghost in his place in time, in his parallel, and so, I was causing events that kind of rippled over into his existence, and he was allowed to, at least hear me. He didn't see me, but he heard what I was doing, and he was reacting to it. So maybe I was his ghost, and that's how the multiverse works. So, but these things aren't. Sometimes they recognize us, and sometimes they interact. But a lot of times they're just doing their own thing, and that's what I find with the non-parasitic hauntings. That's usually what we're dealing with. Sometimes they do notice us, but a lot of times they don't, and they're doing their own thing. And Paul and I did a case back in it must have been 2000, or it wasn't shortly after I met him, where this couple had witnessed seeing, it was like 25 different, maybe 23 different apparitions in the 2 years they were there, and there was like 5 of them, I think, that they saw all the time, but then the other ones were different. They'd be walking by in their hallway by a doorway, and there'd be like a guy just standing right there, and they'd be like, whoa, but these things never acknowledged them, except for this one little girl who used to like to play underneath their dining room table, seemed to be aware of them, but all the others weren't.
Oh, no kidding. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have another question for you. How do you break the connection with these parasitic entities?
That's actually very simple, and I've been fortunate that my clients get it, because I have to tell them, you have to unlearn everything you think you know. Sometimes people just don't know anything about the paranormal. Other times people, they've seen a movie or whatever, and they think they know how this is going to go down when I get there, but the way I deal with it is totally different. So to break the connection, I have to figure out first what allowed that, what the connection with it, the interaction, what initiated that. So what drew them in. So usually we're going to get into something that allowed this person to become vulnerable in a certain way, and I have to identify that. So at the moment of the initiation, when this thing started happening, what was different in your life, we identify that. frequency by changing our emotion and change our internal dialogue. Like I said, that changes the emotion, changes the frequency, and it breaks the connection. So when we're lowered, we're here, we're connected, like a two-way radio. We become more positive. We're on a different area, and they can't connect. It's. I mean, that's a simple way to put it, but it works every time. I mean, I have not had that not work one time, and it's just that it really is that simple. Our emotions have everything to do with everything, with our participation in the interaction, even when we're not aware of that, and it's done through frequency, because our emotions and thoughts do have frequency, and that's how these things, know. And so, these old tactics, they really don't work. And like I tell people, religion's great because it makes us feel love, it makes us be more positive, it makes us think of positive things. But if we use the kind of techniques that these religions use to get rid of these things, it usually never works. Now, if the religion was now I'm talking any different type of religion, if those techniques were gonna work to get rid of the haunt, get rid of the nasty negative entity, why did it not disallow the haunt to begin with when you were practicing your religion all along? So, I mean, that's what we need to look at. Now, those are things I look at when I'm doing my work is, connecting dots, finding patterns, looking at,
But Shane, you said that your state of mind, your depression, having these sad thoughts all the time, why would religion stop a demonic, a parasitic entity from coming to you, regardless of your religion, because you have these other elements?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. And so the religion, if practiced for the right reason, and religion is great for that, to keep us on a more positive path, to fill our hearts full of love, right?
No, not necessarily. You can still be a religious person and get depressed.
Oh yeah, sure, but that's not what I'm saying. But we have our moments. But what I'm saying is if you became depressed, you were practicing your religion, you became attacked, why is a religion going to be used to get rid of it when the religion was in place and it didn't disallow the interaction because of your emotion? So that's where exactly you're saying exactly what I'm getting at, was that it's nothing to do with that area. It has to do with us and our participation, our emotional connection in that frequency sense, and that's what connects us to these things. We need to change that to break the connection.
People have had attachments. I've had 3 of them, but and I can tell you the characteristics of the attachment because all 3 of them were the same, and it's you don't feel right. You know your personality has changed. You argue. You don't get along with anybody, and you're just you're miserable. And so those attachments that I had it been a parasitic entity, would there have been more what I was feeling? Would there be more of a characteristic than what I was feeling? Or in addition to?
It's going to escalate, but that's one of the things that they do because it's part of their agenda. They want to keep us down spiritually, and I'm not just talking about us singly. I'm talking about globally. The whole, everything, different countries, the globe, the Earth in general. They want to keep things in dysfunction. That's what they want, and so they will escalate issues, and it'll get worse and worse and worse, and it will destroy people. And when I hear people say that ghosts can't hurt you. That's bullcrap. They can hurt you physically, and they can really hurt you emotionally. They can destroy your life. I've seen it happen to so many people, and I've come in and helped a lot of them afterwards. There was, like I said, the one gentleman that came to the case in Woonsocket with Paulino and I, who claimed to be a really experienced paranormal investigator who wanted to learn from me, lied to me. He wasn't as seasoned as he said, but he he lost everything. He lost his house, his wife, his job. But it was once he started to be what he thought something followed him home, and he got wicked paranoid. He was freaking out. I counseled him back. I got everything going okay, but I cut him off from the paranormal stuff. I started a website with him too many years ago. I cut him off from that. I said, this is not for you. You just don't have the personality traits. You got a paranoid personality, and that is the worst thing you can have to do this type of work. He decided to do it on his own. Created his own website. Started to try to help clients, and he went right down the tubes. He's living with his mother in a beat up trailer home in Lowell, and he used to have like $1 million home with a great job, So it destroyed him, and that's what they do. That's their agenda, and I don't think it's just to hurt one person individually. Like, I'm gonna really mess up Norene today and make her life hell. I think it's kind of like a global thing that they're looking for, like dysfunction, and it's like I said, the only thing I can deduce from that is that's the only thing they would get out of it. They want us to be at odds. They don't want us to graduate spiritually, to grow spiritually, because if we were all on a heightened frequency in a good place globally, what would we be capable of? And I mean, I'm talking on a spiritual realm, multiverse. I'm also even talking in comparison to other alien, ETs, extraterrestrial existence too. I think some of them don't want us to grow spiritually. Some abductees say that, they tell me that we're not spiritually ready, and I don't think they want us to be. I think they and also these parasitic entities, who I never said were ghosts, they're a life form of some sort. They could be alien, they could be something. These parasitic entities are a life form, and they want to keep us from graduating spiritually, yes. So people call them demons and this or that, but I'll tell you, based on what I've seen them do, and like I said, I've done a lot of cases, and how they operate, it doesn't make sense to me that they're just feeding off of our energy. Personally, there has to be an agenda, and what would that agenda be? Kind of similar to what these abductees claim. They don't want us to grow spiritually. They want to keep us down, so they keep us at odds with each other. That's why I think a lot of these different religions were formed that hate each other. You know what I mean? It's just to keep things from moving forward. And so, in fear that these entities, as well as some of these alien abduction stories, but also these parasitic entity cases, is they both rule off of fear. Now, what's the best way from keeping somebody from growing, whether it be spiritually, financially, or personally, is through fear. Now, if you want to go out, leave your job because you hate it, and you want to go after doing something you love, but you're afraid, what if I don't succeed? What if I don't do? So you never go after that job. You never go after what you love, what was going to bring you center and give you peace and bring you into a place that you want, a direction that you really want, but you're afraid of failure. So you don't go after it. You stay in the job you hate. You loathe your job. You want to ask somebody on a date that you'd be a good match for, but you're afraid of rejection. You never ask. So you stay alone. Fear keeps us from growing, and that's how these things operate. They want to keep us from growing spiritually, personally, and I think that is their agenda, and I don't think I'm wrong. This is based on a couple breakthroughs that I had recently that I won't get into too in depth right now, but I know I'm not wrong about that. And so, as a positive note to all the listeners, and real quick, this is not a spooky statement I'm going to make, is don't live in fear. Go after what you want, and I'll tell you, it's going to make your life better as well as the world as a whole. We need to go after our dreams and really believe that, without fear.
Now, with these parasitic entities, is it one at a time, or can there be multiple?
Oh yeah, there can definitely be multiple. And what's weird too is I've been in towns I've never been in before. I've been in homes in states I've never been in, and I've gotten recordings that said, "Oh, expletive, Shane's here now," and I've gotten the same voice in different homes saying kind of the same thing. Now, these things move around. That's what I'm saying. They're not haunting your home. They're haunting, people. And how do they know my name? Shane's not the most common name. I could see if I got like, oh, Michael on a digital recorder, but I'm getting Shane. Oh, crap, Shane's here. So maybe I dealt with them before. Maybe I helped to get rid of them before, and they left that house and they went somewhere else to mess with somebody else. And here I find them. I run into them again. They're like, oh crap, So there's definitely something to that. You know what I mean?
Are you ready to take questions from the viewers?
Yeah. Can I take a 5-second?
Oh
break,
yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I love questions. I'll be right back.
Okay.
2 seconds.
All righty. Okay, so while we wait for Shane to come back, let me go over to the questions. And everybody, thanks so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping that next week I'll be back on my regular channel. And we'll see. Just if you want, don't forget to sign up for show reminders. And this way you'll always know what channel I'm streaming on, whether it's this channel, Live Paranormal Zone TV, which is my backup channel, or my main channel, which is Do You Believe web series on my main channel, Paranormal Zone TV, and that is a trademark series. And also, please, for those of you who are watching and aren't in the chat room, if you'd subscribe to my channel, both of them, I'd appreciate it. And Shane is back. All right, Shane, hold on. Let me go over to the questions. All right, we got, wow. Okay, hold on. Let me, hold on. Okay, here we go. Andrew Cox wants to know, could these spirits cause you to kill in the house?
Yes. They like I said, they really mess with us emotionally. Now, they're going to bring us to a point. It's going to escalate. It's not going to start there, but it can escalate to a point where we become ultra negative. We might have started there, but it's going to bring us to a point where we're going to really start hating things. We're going to hate our lives, and especially if there's electromagnetic fields around, because that really does alter our levels too. Can make us hostile, can make us act and do and say things that we normally wouldn't. It can definitely alter our personality. So I don't think it's going to turn a really nice guy into a killer, but it can definitely bring people with issues to the point of murder. Absolutely.
Okay. Next question. This is from @2ECW. Any Sasquatch sightings? Have you seen any? Oh, you wanted to talk about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't even talk about that.
Oh, okay, hold on. Oh my God, you know what I forgot? There was that other picture you sent me.
Yeah, the alien creature. They got to see that.
Oh my God, okay, I'm going to show it to them right now.
Okay.
Go ahead, talk about that one.
Alright, so you're talking about the one in the kitchen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Paulino and I are working, on a case, and we're working on a couple paranormal flap areas, one in northwestern Pennsylvania, one in Connecticut, western Connecticut area, that was written about in William Hall's book, the Haunted House Diaries. And Paul had been doing this investigation since 2005. William Hall started writing about it, I think, in 2015 or 2014 to 2015. For some reason, I hadn't gone to this case, but William Hall, did a lecture at one of my events that I threw, and he asked me, he goes, "Hey, I'm going to write about that house. Can you do the investigative part of it so I can, write about that?" So I did, and went to this area. Well, became really close friends with the owners of the house, the subject of this book. Lovely people, sweetest people I know, and but they know somebody in this area, in this flap area, that they had some strange break-ins in their surrounding area, or I should say break-ins. I'm sorry. They had alarms being tripped, but nothing missing from the homes. Just security systems going off. So this couple bought a security system and set it up in their house. And now this security system would see something, take a picture, send it to their phone. They saw what was on their phone. They're like, what the? They called the police. They met the police there. No sign of forced entry. Doors, windows locked. They didn't have any kids. They both are workaholics, very professional. They were embarrassed to show this photo, and they shared it with their friends, who was the subject of William Hall's book, and said, just show to who you trust, and they shared. I was in conversation with them already, and they the lady showed me the photo. She goes, "What do you think?" I'm like, "There's a freaking alien in their kitchen." I mean,
so wait a minute. Now you think that's an alien? It looks like it has a cloak and a hood on.
It looks pretty bizarre. I can say I won't get too far in this, but I had young experience with visitation or alien type things when I was living in Texas as a child, and I have memories of something with a cloak standing at the foot of my bed. But this thing it's really bizarre because I don't see the cloak, but what I see is like I say alien just because it's not human type creature. I see the right hand on the counter, and I see the left elbow kind of extended back. You can see the elbow behind it.
Yes.
Now, I know these people are professional type. They were embarrassed. They didn't want nobody to see this. They didn't want anyone laughing at them. So it was show this in confidence. Paul and I shared with Paul. Paul shows it at his lectures. I showed it at mine, but we asked people no pictures. But recently I said, you know what? No one's ever going to know where this house is, or who it belongs to, and so I think people deserve to see this photo because it's real. These people did not fake this photo.
Was this taken during the day?
Yes, yeah, they were at work during the day.
Oh my!
And
I bet they were scared to death to stay in their house.
Yeah, but and like I said, and there was alarms being tripped in the area. That's why they set this up, in the same type of situation. So this is in that Connecticut flap area.
Oh,
same area that we have military presence too. They're kind of like checking this out.
That is freaky. All right, let me go back to the question. Oh gosh. Okay. Whoops. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. So @2 ECW wants to know about Sasquatch sightings.
Okay. So the other flap area that Paul, and I are doing is in northwest Pennsylvania. This couple reached out to William Hall because they read his book, The Haunted House Diaries, about the flap area in Connecticut, and they said, "Hey, we have something similar going on there. We think it might be a little bit more active, or at least more widespread." So it was supposed to be Paul, me, and Bill to do a conference call with this couple. For some reason, Bill couldn't connect to it, so it was Paul and I that did the conference call with them. And Bill was not able to, due to engagements and stuff, and with his book and everything, wasn't able to join us. So Paul and I made the initial visit down in this May of 2016. Now, they had 3 homes on this property. I think it's around 50 acres or so. 3 homes, all family members. They all own their little area. Well, 2 of the houses own like a smaller area of land, but then the original owner of the land, who's I think 3 generations have lived on this property, own the rest of it. So it's just some clearing, and then the rest is all woods. And they have like in the middle, they have like this pavilion with a little campground for their family to go out and camp and spend time. Well, they had one of the houses was having shadow figures sightings. They have shadow figures in their house. There was 1 or 2 houses talked about abductions, possible abductions that they were experiencing. They were seeing UFO UFOs above tree lines, one V-shaped that they would see a lot, and then one orange type disc. But they were also, since the 50s, seeing Sasquatch. So when we went down there, I was expecting to hopefully, talk to the people with the shadow figures, kind of educate them so it didn't get nasty, but also to, hopefully we'll get some UFOs above tree lines and stuff. And we did. We got pictures of the V-shape. I took a picture of the V-shape one above the trees. I took a picture one in daylight, a disc up above the trees in daylight. Also, the orange lights that they saw, I took a picture of that. Paul's got pictures of lights too, and streaks and stuff. Our trail cams that we set up took pictures of weird stuff. So I was going there expecting to see lights and UFOs and stuff like that. I never expected for a million years that I would see what I ended up seeing. We went to one of the properties, and Paul has like a metal allergy or whatever, and there was an area where there was like a meteor strike or something, and it really affected him. I could see it in his face. He looked really anxious, and he wanted to get out of there. And I had been asking me, "You all right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think I got to go lay down." So we left. It was pouring rain that day, pouring. And he went. They had a basement where they had two beds laid out. Paul laid in one of those. Took a nap for a couple hours. I said, "All right." During that time, I'm going to go down to the campsite, and I have a SUV, and I parked the SUV. I was trying to dry off. I had the heat cranked. My truck was on idle. Pouring rain. I'm talking like just absolute pouring rain. I think that's why this thing that I ended up seeing never heard the truck running, because it was raining so hard. But I'm waiting for the rain to let up, and I'm going to go put trail cams throughout the property where people have claimed to see these Sasquatch, even though I didn't expect anything from that. Next thing I know, I see something to like my 1 or 2 o'clock, and there's about 100 to 150 feet away, there was a thin tree line, and you'll see the tree line in the photo that I sent you. I don't know if you're sharing that, but...
yeah, I did.
Okay. Now, so I was about 100 to 150 feet away from that, sitting in the truck, and something caught my eye. I looked up, and this black figure just went, and it stopped in between two trees, right near that yellow sign, or just beyond that yellow sign. And first thing I did was, okay, I don't know what I'm looking at. My vantage point, because of the landscape layout, how tall this thing is, but it was moving weird. It was surreal to me. I've been in nature my whole life. I've never seen anything move like this. It was weird. But I said, okay, that thing's as tall as the top of that sign. So, but I didn't know how tall that was at the time. So, next thing I know, I'm powering my camera on. I put my truck in drive, and I hit the gas, and just as I start going, the thing took off to my right. Gone. I head up the path. I tried to cut it off. It was long gone. But just as I started passing where it was, I looked over to my left. It had flushed 3 big white-tailed deer out of the woods. Now, this thing was dark, real dark, and these things were, white, bushy tail, and so I clearly didn't mistake the two. And plus, at the height that they were, my vantage point, I would have not even seen them at all because of the landscape. So they wouldn't even been in my field of vision. But this thing was, and it headed up. So I went and tried to cut it off, and it was gone. I backed back up, got out of my truck, walked up to that sign, and it was like, are you kidding me? I'm 6 foot tall. This thing was 1.5 to 2 foot taller than me, so upwards to 8 foot tall. And but the way when it moved, I'm glad we're on Skype because you guys can see. But when it ran, its arms were actually going above its head like this, and it was just really bizarre. It had massive arms. Now, I'm not going to say Sasquatch. I'm going to say it wasn't a bear. A bear don't run on 2 feet. They run really fast on 4, but they don't run on 2 feet. And now we went back in September, and Paulino was in the field behind the main house. I was down at that same area, which I heard talking. I say talking because I couldn't make out what they were saying, but all night long I stayed in the people's RV, and I heard like and it was coming from both sides of the camper, and it was weird. There was one higher pitched voice and one about the tone that I was just doing, and it was definitely, they were communicating with each other. It was the weirdest thing, but it happened all night long. And there was a neighbor that came over to the house that actually said, yeah. He goes, because he had lived there since being a kid. He's older than I am. And he said, that's how they communicate. He goes, I've heard them do that my whole life. That's how they communicate.
No.
And I've never heard of that before. Like,
me either.
People call me the ghost expert, but I'm not an expert at Sasquatch. But Paul, meanwhile, was parked next to a deer stand or deer blind behind the main house, looking down at the field. He was more drawn to the left side because there had been a lot of helicopters that are seen rising up through that. It was like a knoll that goes down, but there's also, I agree with him, there's something that draws us both to it. There's something special about that area. So he was kind of focusing on that, but next thing you know, something caught his attention to the right. He's sitting in his truck because it was a little cold that night. Sitting in his truck, so just to the right, he sees this thing walking around in the high grass. And so he gets his camera and he tries to take a picture through the glass, but kind of cold, kind of frosty and everything. And he didn't get it. So he started to open the door to peek around the windshield to kind of snap a shot. And his phone rings, and it's his wife. It's around 10 o'clock or so, just past 10 o'clock at night. He left his phone on and I did the same thing, in case we needed to communicate. Even though I have, I do have two-way radios, but today you don't really need them with the technology our phones have. So he looked up after taking the call from his wife, or just as it rang, he went to silence it, and this thing was gone. But we went first thing in the morning. We walked back up there, and you could see the tracks all exactly where he said they were. It was, like I said, it was all high grass, and it was all matted exactly where he pointed. And we did a reenactment where I was walking in that area, and he was at the same spot that he was, and said that this thing was about 2 foot taller than I was. And he said it was, dark brown, long hair, big. He said he kept talking about how big the knees and the legs were, real big, So now, doing the work, Paul's done this a long, long time. I've done this a long, long time. We learn not to exaggerate, to jump to conclusions. We see things, we operate off facts, because you can't make something out of something. But we will recall what we saw, and I'm telling you, what I saw was nothing I expected to see, and it blew my mind. But we both described the feeling of privilege. I was a little shocked at first, like, what am I looking at? This is weird. But then you kind of, it's not even like you're freaked out. I wasn't freaked out. It was like, how lucky am I to see this,
Wow, yes, I'll say.
Yeah.
All right. You want to go on with more questions?
Yeah.
All right. River wants to know, he wants to know, do you know anything about sleep paralysis?
I know a lot about sleep paralysis.
Is that another show?
Right. Well, I can say, like, I did an article about sleep disorders and how people, confuse them for paranormal events. I did this a long time ago, and then all of a sudden, a lot of these, famous groups started ripping me off, ripping my articles off, and stuff like that. So that's why my website doesn't have a lot of stuff anymore, because I got tired of being ripped off. But basically, yes.
I did see another website that has your same article.
Yeah. So, there's one that asked me to use it, a popular website that asked me to use one of my articles, but they were also one of the ones that ripped off my sleep disorder article. So, but it's fine. It's flattering, I guess. And so, but basically, here's where I stand on sleep paralysis. It's a state of atonia. There is a chemical, an institute discovered that there actually is a chemical that we release when we're in deep sleep, and that disallows muscular function. So we don't act out our dreams, and it's such the case of night terrors where people run through walls or smash into tables and break their arms, and because they're acting out their dreams. So this chemical disallows or shuts down that muscular function, so we don't injure ourselves in these states. So I mean that is a clinical fact, and so what happens is we wake up, we're in that state. We're unable to move and unable to talk. Usually, we can make certain vocalizations out, like And I know, and I've had this happen to me a lot. I've experienced sleep paralysis quite a bit. Now, what usually brings us on is extreme overtiredness. It could be, just being very overtired. Some people, it's brought on by, alcoholism or drug abuse or different stresses or whatever, but it's generally when you're not getting the proper sleep that you really need, and there's maybe other components involved in that, but you wake up and you are awake and you're aware, but you're also in kind of like a hallucinating state, and so you might see or hear or feel things that aren't real, and I believe that that's the case a lot, but one of my episodes, and this is why I say it's not always explained through science, and this is one of those cases. I was sleeping on the couch one night, and I had many episodes of sleep paralysis, and this was one time where I was experiencing it a lot. I fell asleep on the couch. I was on my left side. My right arm I was on my side, and so my right arm was behind the back of the couch, and my back was to the room. And I woke up, and I felt like there was something behind me. And a couple of these times where I had these things happen to me, it's always like, of course, like I said, you're kind of hallucinating too, because you're kind of like in between, but you are awake. A lot of these times, it's always like I feel like there's aliens coming to get me. That's what's in my mind. And so I'm like, I want to turn around, but I can't. So I figured if I can fight it hard enough and get my arm up high enough, I can drop it and it'll force my body to turn. And as that started to happen, I saw this black figure come at me, and I felt like I got pulled really hard and fast. And I'm a pretty big guy, and I felt myself go through the air. I hit the floor. One of the ways I found when I'm going through sleep paralysis, and I haven't had that happen to me for a long time, but since I was in my early 30s, but is to calm down, concentrate on my breathing, don't fight it, and you come out of it. If you fight it, it gets worse. So I did that on the floor, but I ended up falling back asleep, and I woke up. Now, if I had just fallen off the couch, if I had just rolled and fell off the couch, I cleared the coffee table, and I was 15 feet away from the couch I was laying on, but I had cleared the coffee table. There's no way that happened. So I think in some cases, there's definitely more to it than just a clinical or, scientific explanation using, the explanation of ammonia and this chemical, which I can't recall the name of the damn chemical right now, but certainly that does, because under in sleep studies and stuff, they've seen people experiencing the sleep paralysis, and no aliens next to them. There's no ghosts. It's just they're in this state of atonia or whatever. But I think it can't explain it all the time. I definitely feel strong about that.
Okay. Joanne Dion, what about aliens? Are they parasites?
I think some of them are. I think some of the species are. And I think, like I said, they operate off of fear, just like the parasites do. And that's why I said once I had this process to identify trends, I started to realize that these parasitic entities, they had some kind of agenda in what they were doing. And I wasn't going to call them demons or ghosts or nothing. I'm going to unlearn what I think I know and just talk about what they are. Or no, because I always said, to understand things, forget about who they are, what they are, focus on how they are. And so I started looking at how they are, and that's when I started to realize that, what allows them to interact with us. And then that forced me to look at why are they doing this. And these parasitic entities, I think, operate off of fear. They instill fear. They control with fear. And I think some of these, come on, I don't think there's any intelligent person right now alive that can say that aliens aren't here. They're not. They don't exist. You know what I mean? And I think some of these species, I think, are definitely, they operate with fear, because I think they both kind of have the same agenda. They don't want us to graduate. They don't want us to become. When I say spiritual, I don't mean like religious type spiritual. I'm talking about being on a higher frequency as globally, because that would be dangerous. We could, especially, but I think that's the agenda. Anyways, I think for some reason they're trying to manipulate that and kind of keep us down, personally and globally, as a whole, as a human being in its entirety.
All right, another question. Mandy and Joyce, do any of these parasitic attacks happen to children?
Yes. Most of the time, it's because of what the story I told earlier. The parasitic, the nasty ones, are usually not drawn to the children themselves, even though it may appear that way at sometimes. They might focus their attention on the children because they know it's a way to get to the parents or to the one that is in the vulnerable state. So if you're not giving it the proper amount of attention, it's going to mess with your children, because there's no better way to get to a protective mom or a protective dad who's going through something, who might be a perfect target, who's not really participating in the way that parasite wants them to. Let me mess with your kid and let me see if I can change your mind. And so that's usually what happens.
Okay, another question from Miss Ruth. Can you ask him if that would be also called a possession?
No. Possessions, different. They can result, they can result from this, because once these parasites, this attachment, or this connection escalates in such a way, it's, like I said, it's kind of merging, or they're changing the frequency, and they're keeping us at that frequency, and those two frequencies align. So it can turn into that. But I'm telling you, true, that most possessions that I've come across, that I've dealt with, every single one of them, I would say most of them, 99.9% of the possession cases or alleged possession cases I've dealt with, came from somebody that was raised in a dysfunctionally religious home, or who was dysfunctionally religious themselves. And I'm talking about the people that got into religion for the wrong reasons, and a lot of times people that were practicing religion because they screwed their life up so bad that they needed the hand of God to help them, that they were so open to God's love that they actually allowed themselves to be attacked by an entity so that they could be touched by the hand of God, and that would make things all better. But it always comes. Most of these possession cases have come from, and look at history. Look at all the well-known religious cases, possession cases that we know about. They all were dysfunctionally religious families.
Okay. Let's see. Nancy Suplavida, what are many ways to protect yourself from parasitic entities?
Well, in daily life, or I guess we'll talk in general, but daily life or investigations, I tell most people, if you're going to put yourself in paranormal, I'll address both areas, but if you're going to put yourself in paranormally active areas, you need to be very educated of the mechanics, and like I said, most people are not, but to simplify it, because I know we don't have all the time in the world, don't go into these areas and with fear. If you think you're going to be frightened by this, stay away. Just don't even do it. You have to also be grounded, but you have to be positive in mind. You can't be in a dark place. You can't be in a vulnerable state. You really, and it doesn't mean you're not going through something bad in your life, but you have to be able to gather yourself before going in this and shut that stuff off. Shut that off from your internal dialogue, because that is emitting this frequency that these things are connected to. So you have to be able to empty your internal dialogue. That's a very important word, is internal dialogue. It kind of controls a lot of these things. So you got to be able to blank that out and just go into these areas without fear, without thought, and that's, positive thoughts, but no negative thoughts and no fear, and and definitely, that's the best advice. But another thing you can do is Google me or whatever. Listen to our, me, Paulino. Listen to some of our shows that we've done, and learn from that, because there are mechanics involved in this, and it's just not all spiritual. Because even the spiritual has a scientific equation, and this is to simplify it, but just no attention, no fear, and just don't go into it with baggage. You know what I mean? Just love and positive energy, and no fear.
Okay. Last question. Have you, from Teresa Browning, have you ever had a case that stumped you, or you couldn't help them, even when the client changed their life into a positive way of thinking?
No, it's amazing, but it's that simple. It's worked every time. There was only one. I do have a 100% success rate. There was one recent case I did where the gentleman was really stuck on old preconceived ideas, and he was, he had all kinds of investigators going there. He was belligerent to them. He was degrading. There was a psychic. There was two other groups. He was rude to both of them. Finally, I got brought in. He was receptive to my ideas at first, but then he just did. I thought he was anyways, but he just didn't seem to get it. And he thought, he like myself, part Native American, he thought, well, we're just gonna burn a bunch of sage and everything's gonna be all right. And I already told him he burned a ton of sage himself, and that can help. But the problem is he wasn't addressing his personal issues, and he was another gentleman battling cancer who wasn't in the best place, even though he convinced himself that he was a very positive person, but he clearly was not. And so he was having a hard time grasping that there is a scientific equation, and there are mechanics involved. It's not just all smoke, all these other techniques. So I haven't spoke to him in a couple months, and but he is somebody I can help. I told him, you tell me when you're receptive to my ideas, because he just seems so stubborn and just thinking of the old ways. So you can remain a victim, but once you're ready to listen to me, then but he's the only one. I've helped everyone else, and I've helped thousands of people. So I can say that what I've discovered in this process that I use is effective every time, and I'm lucky, and I'm fortunate to be able to be the one to help people with that.
I think Miss Ruth had a question earlier and I forgot it. She said, I want to know if it's too late to ask this. Did anything ever get attached to you?
No, never.
Never.
No, I've been in cases where, there were investigators that were being attacked. There were some that were suffering strong headaches, earaches, and stuff like that. And I was chasing this thing around the basement, and I'd find it in like big cold mass, and I'd feel it move, and my hair would move. This thing was running away from me, and and but other people were being attacked, and I've never had an attachment. I've never been assaulted by these things. I've been touched by them. And it's, like just like Paul might have said on your show, he says a lot. You can feel bone structure, and it's like you can feel like boom, like somebody just nudges you, and you can feel it. But I've never been attacked, and never had an attachment because I know what allows that, and because I know what allows that, it disallows them from doing those things. There's a process. There are things, mechanics that have to be in place in order for that to happen. And if you have the proper education, which most people don't, it can't happen.
Wow. Thank you so much, Shane, for coming on the show tonight. It was just a pleasure to have you on the show. Excellent speaker, fabulous information for the viewers. I really, really enjoyed having you on the show, and I want to thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and anytime, I'd love to come back.
Now, is there any information you'd like to give to the viewers? I do have a picture of you with your website.
Okay.
TrueGhost.com. Any other location where they can reach you if they need help? What's the best way?
Yep, that you can go to trueghost.com, TrueGhost.com, and my email address is there. You'll find and my phone number. So feel free, and if with like your show and some other big shows that I do, I get bombarded with emails, so I will get back to you. So if I don't get back to you right away, I will, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad. Thanks for having me on, and I've noticed you have a faithful following, and I've been excited to get to talk to new people.
Oh, I loved having you on. I did. I think I sent a couple people your way. Were you able to help them? Do you remember?
Yes. I helped so many people, but yes, I definitely. I one of them, yes, for sure. The other one, I think. I'm trying to think. I think they never got back to me.
Okay.
But one of them for sure, yes. They were. I checked up on, and they said, everything's exactly the way I said it was going to be at first. It slowed down, but then like I told them, it's going to try to kick things up and get you to pay more attention to it, so it might start in even stronger. Hold your ground, and they did that, and they were problem free.
Wow. Well, I will certainly keep your contact, and I will continue to send people your way. And
awesome.
It was an honor and awesome to have you on the show, Shane. Thank you so much. I hope we can do another show. So yeah. I would love to have you come back.
Anytime. I love it.
Thank you so much. Good night, Shane. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Wow, he was awesome. I know you guys enjoyed the show because I saw you. Wonderful speaker, excellent presence. I just love having him on, and I would like to have another show, air another show with him. He also airs a show, I think, once a month or twice a month with my friend Paul Eno, who was absolutely awesome. I have a playlist with him. The shows I've done with Paul Eno are unbelievable. Anyway, thanks everyone so much for being here and sticking it out tonight with me. I'm hoping that things get back to normal next week. I'll know next Tuesday if I'm going back to my main channel for next Thursday's show. I got an awesome show for Thursday, and I keep forgetting to give you the website, but it's on ITC's Communicating with the Dead, and it's a group that's worldwide. They have 4 stations, all one in Brazil, and I forget one here, I think in the United States, and I don't know where the other. They've been researching and experimenting on communicating with the dead, and they say they have proof and this is all going to come out in about a year, and I wish I had that guy's website. He is a doctorate, he's a PhD, and I forget, well, I'm sorry I don't have all the information, but I'll post it. It's going to be fabulous. I was so excited. I asked him to come on the show, and I was really, I got a message right back from him. I'm so excited that he wants to come on the show. Anyway, so and I've got, so that's the next week will be the last show for the month, and then I have oh my God, December 1st. I have a guest. He has been on television. He has written his second book on the Day at Love Pass incident, and I'm airing another show on Day at Love Pass, and it's going to be an update. He actually went to Russia for his second book. He was able to open up the archives and get information to write this second book, and he's going to tell us more information and an update on the incident of those 9 hikers that were killed. So anyway, I want to thank you all so much. I've got some great shows coming up. I'm hoping to be back on next Thursday on my main channel. If not, we'll be using this channel until January. So everybody, please pass the word, share my shows, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so. You can go to my website, paranormalzone.tv, for show reminders, so you'll always know where the show is going to be. So let's do some shout outs, whoever is left. I want to thank my mods, my dear Royce Hinman, who's always there for me, Sweet Annie, and Crystal. And so let's do some shout outs. Okay, oh gosh, Royce gets, okay, so Zoe Small, Andrew Cox, I See Lies, Joyce Lynn, Sandra Miller, Joanne Dion, Baysinger 11, Paula Tomlinson, Rhonda Hickman, Princess Patricia. Okay, anybody else want to shout out? Yeah, we haven't seen Baysinger for a while. B3 Airspace. There's some more left. Anybody else want to shout out? Anyway, again, I want to thank you so much for coming over to this other channel. It's not a regular, I know, but it's a backup channel where I can do my shows, when things happen. And things do happen. Hi, Miss Ruth. Oh, you're welcome, Royce. Send positive vibes our way to Royce. He can always use them. Oh, Jimmy Cortez. There's my Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy. We love you, Jimmy. Yes, Miss Ruth, I did. Hi, Miss Ruth. Thank you. We don't always see you, but thanks for joining when you can. Anybody else want to shout out? I love you guys. Group hug. My gosh, you're welcome. Meow meow. And yes, that's the kitty. That's the latest kitty I rescued, and it meows all the time. It's a meower. But that's the last one. That's number 15. No more. All right, everybody. So Thanksgiving in a couple of weeks. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I love the holidays, except the year goes by too fast. Mandy Ann Joyce. Yes, group hugs to everybody. We've got a wonderful group. Love you guys. My faithfuls, they're always here to watch my show. I really appreciate it. Ginger Simmons, there you are. Okay, everybody. Anybody else want to shout out? Yes, group hug to everybody. Love you guys. Okay, well, wow. Oh my gosh. It's 8:20 already. Okay. So, Elaine Michael, Teresa Browning. Anybody else want to shout out? Margarita Aranda. Yeah, you got your shout out, Margarita. Yeah. Anybody else want to shout out? Anyway, I think you're going to like the show next week. I'm really excited to have this man on. If I don't see you guys at the next show next week, Tammy Sifford. Hope those who can't come to the show next week, hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. All right, so I guess that's about it. I did, Nancy. I did the shout out for you, Nancy Soplavita. I did. Carl White. Oh my gosh, there you are. He always sneaks in at the very end. Yes, Carl's. Oh, bless your heart, Carl. 4:21 a.m. in the morning. Why are you up so late? Thanks, honey, for being here. I know you're usually here at the shows. That's really nice of you to do that. Love you. All right, everybody. Thanks again for watching, and you're welcome. Yeah. Carl is devoted. He's usually here every week. It's that is so awesome. All right, guys. I love you. And I will see you next week, whether it's here or on my other channel. Don't forget to sign up for show reminders, and then you'll know exactly what channel I'll be on. Yeah, my buddy Dave, I saw him pop in. New Kindle Jenner family and Poof Baby 61. How come you guys all come at the last minute? I'm just ready to sign off. Oh, Carl, thank you so much. Gosh, 4:21 in the morning, and he watches my show every week. He's always there. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful weekend. Mine starts tomorrow. I'm so excited. See you guys all next weekend. Group hugs. I love you guys, and thank you so much for all your support and your loyalty to my show, and to my mods, and to Royce, who's here every week with me. I really depend on Royce. And everybody, thank you. Love you guys. You are the best. Love you. Good night, everyone. Good night.